Hey, what's going on, you guys? I'm back here for part two of the video. This is actually going to be the assembly part. So, we're going to give you a little bit of information on this weapon as well. Now, if you look at all the parts on the table, it doesn't really look like much, right? This is where this weapon got its really bad name. So, with that being said, I'm just going to zoom in. You know, if you took apart your bolt and you looked inside and you got those two pins out, great. If you forgot which way they go, this is where I'm going to tell you. Your round pin and your curved spring will go up into the front. Your flat or your straight spring with your flat pin will go right in there or right into this rear hole. So, round pin, flat pin. Your little locking bar will go in at an angle, like so. Now, if you notice on the back part of your bolt, you see that little notch? If you take your charging handle, like so, or your bolt, you put it in, now you can turn it a little bit. A little rule of thumb, once you put it in, come over onto the opposite side to that little hole, drop your pin in. Rule of thumb. Now, as for oiling points, normally I'll put a little bit of grease all over it, or at least on my fingertips. You can see the wear marks on this bolt fairly well. A little bit of oil or grease here, 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 here. Same thing on this. You want to try to keep it a little on the slicker side for various reasons. But also to make sure if you ever have to pick up this weapon, especially in defense, you want to make sure it's going to work. Now, for the next parts of the process, I also forgot one thing. Remember your charging handle? I'm simply going to push it in for right now. Your charging handle will go in only one way. Notice that little hole right there? It's where that pin that we had to punch out comes into play. It goes in right like so. Your charging handle has a little bit of a notch cut right into it. So it's not like you can really reverse it too much. If you took it down to a machine shop, they might be able to notch it out, but why bother? It's fine just the way it is. The demise of this weapon was mainly because of how big of a pain in the butt it was to take it down and put it back together. That was the main part. Oiling points inside the frame as well. You don't really have to go too crazy. Your bolt will actually do a good majority of it. But if you see a little bit of a wear mark or something like that inside, take your finger, put a little bit of grease on it, or oil, put it right on there, you'll be fine. I'm not going to pick up the barrel yet, but we're going to concentrate with this piece. So let's go over to my favorite workstation, shall we? I'm going to grab my charging handle, or not my charging handle, yeah. I'm going to grab that rod, going to grab my bolt, set it in like so. Keep your finger on the other side, because remember that pin? It will fall out. Grab your plastic piece, And I've actually seen these things on eBay, so if you do break it or lose it, they're about $1.50 or so. And what you want to do is just slowly start working it in. The little plastic piece will actually float right into its own home. And you don't really want to force it. But at the same time, you don't want to lose anything. So, you can see I had to turn it upside down just a little bit, do a little bit of finagling, it went right in. Now, what you could actually do at this point, if you really, really wanted to, you could turn the weapon upside down, like so. Or, better yet, take your charging handle, stick it into the hole, and then if you have a pair of pliers, pliers, take your pin. Now your pin actually has two different points on it. You have your flat and your round point. Take the round point, stick it right in there. Take one of your punches, press it in just a little bit. Now this is where you're going to have to take your non-marring hammer on your pin. Set it right on top. Hit it in just a little bit. And you want to try to have it as flush as possible. If I zoom in, you could actually see, how flush that pin is. And the reason why you want it flush is because if you don't have it flush, or at least as close to flush as you can, what will end up happening is it'll actually sit and ride up on your magazine. So with that being said, I'm just pushing it in just a little bit more. Don't worry about over pushing it because it's not going to really come out the other side. Now that we have the bolt taken care of, where we know point blank it's not going to come flying out at us, right? I'm going to grab my barrel. Now, as I discussed, your barrel code you'll be able to see from the outside of the weapon and any other information. You don't really have to oil this. If you oiled a little bit of the grooves right inside, you'll be fine. But your locking bolts, it doesn't have like a 3-point. It has more of a 12-point. Because of all the lands and grooves inside the bolt, they'll actually sit and lock up right inside there. Get your barrel on. Put it in sideways in the handle. Turn it so that this way it's flat. Now at this point, take your washer. And all this does is actually hold the forearm on. That's all it really does. just holds the forearm on in place. Some, I mean, if you don't want to put it on, you don't really have to, but because it was on the weapon, it's staying on mine, right? Take your bolt. See the top hat piece? That's going to go towards the butt of the weapon. Now, remember that way how I took off or loosened up this bolt? We're going to do it the same way, except in the opposite way. Now again, I hope you're using like a towel or something soft under you, so that this way you're not going to do any kind of damage to the firearm. And what you want to do is, again, place your leg right over the stock. Take your crescent wrench. You know, you might have to refit it again. And you don't really need this thing like super tight. You know, probably about maybe a max of 20 pounds on that. If you do strip them, you know, if you can't get it off, great. You might have to use a pair of vice grips or something like that just to get a grip on it. If you can't, you know, your gunsmith might be able to do it, or somebody like that. Take it down to a machine shop. They might charge you a $10 bill. Go on to Numeric. They actually have replacement ones online. You know, I got lucky. They actually, like I said, they actually do make a special wrench for that. So, you know, if you don't have it, don't worry about it. You can get away with just simply using a crescent wrench and being safe. Now, the bolt is inside the weapon. The weapon is oiled. If you want to take a little bit of grease before you put your forearm, just put a little bit right on there. Great. But if you're actually smart, you can actually put it right inside. Now, as for the next steps of the process, if you have little kids in the room, I do recommend taking them out. You know, we don't need little kids learning the language of what we use. Now, if you do go to clean this part of the weapon, don't clean it too good. Only for a reason why. The more carbon buildup you have on this, well, not really say the most, but if you have a little bit of carbon buildup on it, don't worry about it. It's not going to do any kind of damage. When you have carbon on it, it actually creates a better seal, so you don't really have to go too crazy cleaning it. Take your guide rod with your little washer right on it. And again, if you have little kids in the room, I do recommend you asking them to leave at least for, you know, a couple minutes, because you might end up saying some choice words you don't really mean. And I'm sure, you know, we all know what those words are. So, now you have your rod to that point, right? You've got probably about a 3-inch gap or something like that. Take your spring. Start feeding it on. Sometimes they'll actually go on easier than others, but sometimes they will not. So hence the reason why I said, you know, ask the little tyke to leave. Now have them go watch a Blue's Clues video or Curious George, you know, somebody like that. Now you can see how much this one did fight me. Now notice how this weapon is sitting right now. The spring is on, the guide rod is all the way back. Now all you're going to want to do is just simply move the charging handle rearward. Just to set it into place. And do something like that. Your washer is going to be straight. Now all you have to do, take your pin, and this is just simply a roll pin. Set it in place for a quick second. Go big or go home, right? No, I'm actually doing it so that this way it doesn't get too damaged. And all you really want to do is when you put it in, you don't really have to set it too crazy. Try to make it so that this way it's even on both sides. You know, if you look at it. That's all. You know, that's all you're really looking for. Something on even on both sides so that this way it's not going to go crazy on you, right? Cycle the weapon a couple times. Make sure it locks up. Make sure there's no wiggle room on this barrel, which there is not. Make sure that the locking lugs all go in, like so. And just because I don't feel like going inside the weapon, yeah, I'm just gonna add a little bit of grease before I put on this forearm. I'm going to put it on both sides simply because of the fact you can actually see the wear marks. Wear marks are actually really bad because they'll actually cause a little bit of damage. And these parts are becoming harder and harder to find. So I just take a little bit of oil, move it around this point. This actually flexes. Not much, but it will flex. So, now with that being said, we could put on our forearm or we could put it in our fire control. So, what should we do first? You know what? Tell you what. Let's put in the fire control. Because I want to cycle this weapon with this in so that this way it'll actually, so that this way I know point blank if I do have to pick it up, it will function. Now, make sure the trigger is unsafe. Make sure the hammer is dropped. If you did pull the trigger, don't worry. You know, all you have to do, still, set the weapon on safe, or set the trigger mechanism on safe. Pull back your hammer. Let it sit. You know, and all you really want to do, set in the rearward part first, or you could set in your front part first. You know, whichever one your weapon prefers. You know, sometimes you can wait. You can do the front part first. Other times you cannot. We all know how that one goes. You know, for the younger kids that might be wanting to try this, you know, if Oh, excuse me, excuse me. If you guys want to attempt this, you know, it's not really that big of a pain in the butt to do this weapon. You know, it can be if you let it. You know, that's rule of thumb. Yeah, as I said before, some days these will go in easy, other days they will not. This one, on the other hand, seems to want to be a pain in my butt. Okay. I'm going to set my rearward pin in first. Pull up on the trigger mechanism a little bit. Set your front pin in. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cycle the weapon. I'm going to make sure it's going to go click. Weapon is still on safe. Hammer will not drop. Weapon's on fire, and what I'm doing is I'm just watching that hammer, make sure it goes click, and then at the same time what I'm going to do is I'm going to look underneath. Firing pin went forward. That's a good sign, right? So take your forearm, now remember where I said that washer will come into place? You see the tabs? That forearm is not going to go anywhere unless you fire it. It might move a little bit, but not too much. Take your screwdriver again. Screw on your forearm. Take your sling, if you do have one on it. Most people who do use this actually do have a sling. This is just simply a 2-point. This thing, it's old. It's not really beat up too much. It still works. And the one thing I like about this, I can actually, if I really wanted to, I could actually take apart the sling just simply by a flathead screwdriver. So that's always a plus, isn't it? Yep. Which, matter of fact, yeah, I'm actually going to have to do. Because when I actually put this sling on, we screwed up a little bit. So, yeah. As I'm doing this, you know, I want you to remember, you know, weapons back in the day were not always how they were here. Yeah, and when I say here, I'm talking about how we could basically strip a Glock down in 5 minutes, rebuild it, and send it out the door. You know, a lot of times these weapons, you know, they require a little bit of TLC. They require a little bit of love. And you know what? Why shouldn't we be the ones to give the weapons the attention that they require? Yeah. This weapon has been in my family for over 30 years. And you know what? If I have a kid, I hope that the weapon is still in my house. So this way I can hand it, so this way I can send it from one generation down to the other. A lot of the weapons I do have in my house are, yeah, they were my father's from when he was shooting and hunting and doing all that good stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean they were bad. Doesn't necessarily mean that they had any issues with them. It just simply means that the weapons were always taken care of. You know, these weapons, they're always fun. This one, on the other hand, a friend of mine will actually call a shoulder killer. He was too chicken to fire it. He really was. He doesn't like anything with any kind of recoil to it. Before I forget, remember how I was telling you about that pin that needs to get drived in? This is where it will come into play. You pop it in. Weapon cycles. Take out your magazine. This one will not hold the shot or the bolt back on the last shot. If I use this magazine, it actually will, for some strange reason. As you can tell, you know, the feed ramp on the rear is actually set up a little bit higher. Not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah. It's a nice little tidbit of information, isn't it? Well, anyways. Oh, yeah. It's a little bit of a heavier weapon, but it's always fun to shoot. So until the next time, remember, always treat others. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Treat every weapon as if it's loaded. And, you know, more importantly, just have fun at what you do. You know, life is too short to sit there arguing. Life is too short to be mad at every single person. If when you're at the range and somebody wants to shoot one of your weapons, yeah, I can understand if the ammunition is pricey. But you know what? Maybe they're looking at picking up that weapon. You know, especially like with Glocks or something like that. You know, they're fairly, the ammunition form is fairly cheap, except for the 10mm and I think 357 SIG. But if, you know, you have a 9mm or something like that, and you know he wants to take 5-6 shots, let him. Because you know what? life is too short to always be mean to every person you meet. There's been a lot of times where I've been at the range or something like that where one of the range officers come up. Yeah, I had one last time I was there. He wanted to try out my 1911. What am I going to do? Say no? I walked up with over 300 rounds. I think I could spare about 7. Yeah, I was even shooting soda bottles. Yeah, he comes up and he goes, "Is that can fair game?" You know, man, if you can hit it, by all means, take it with yourself. So, if the only thing you look at my channel for is simply me being mean or something like that, fine. But being mean and being angry at everybody all the time is not always nice. So until the next time,